Sly Cooper: Honor Among Thieves is a game about relationships, the bonds between family, friends, and enemies. A game that sets aside the world-ending threats of evil masterminds and asks the question of, hey, what's in that vault? Being that this is now the third entry in a series, there's a lot to live up to here. Will Sly 3 fill the shoes of the titles that came before it, or will it fall flat on its face and slink off into the night, fluffy raccoon tail tucked between its legs? Over the course of the next couple thousand words and several minutes, I aim to find the answer to this question by taking you through the story, gameplay, and potential shortcomings of this game. Maybe I'll even tell a few jokes along the way, who knows. And hey, if you're new, maybe you end up hitting that subscribe button if you end up liking the video. Just a thought. True to form for this series, we open our adventure in the middle of a heist. This time though, things feel a bit more dire. Our goal is to locate and open the Cooper family vault, said to house the collective loot bags of every Cooper from ages past. Unfortunately, an evil monkey has taken up ownership of the Cooper Island since the tragic passing of Sly's parents, so we need to sneak in. The monkey, Dr. M, is a real bastard too, so don't feel bad about this despite the millions he must pay in property tax. Controlling Sly hasn't really received any kind of upgrade or change since Sly 2, with the exception of the thief moves. It may just be me, but I feel like they snapped to points from way further away than before, which is a wildly welcome change. Other than that, controls are pretty basic: X to jump, left stick to move, and circle to perform the truly impossible feat of walking along a narrow path. The controls being largely unchanged isn't a complaint. If there's nothing wrong with the system in the first place, why make any major alterations? So with the assistance of Bentley and some other mystery characters we'll get to later, we jump, sneak, and eavesdrop through the island, making our way to the Cooper vault. Unfortunately, our opening of the vault is interrupted and we have to retreat for the time being. It isn't really touched on here, but in an unfortunate bit of continuity, Bentley is confined to a wheelchair after the events of the last game, and this world isn't exactly ADA compliant, so he's made a few upgrades, namely a jet thruster. Sorry, I got a bit sidetracked for a second. What's happening? Well, that's unfortunate, but don't put Sly on the kill count yet. Turns out this was an in media res intro, and we are now flashing back to the actual start of the game. This is an interesting choice for our opening. In every other title, the intro was just that, the introduction, the start of the story we were about to embark on. Here, we instead already know where we're headed and who we're facing off against. I'm conflicted on this approach. On the one hand, it is interesting to know exactly what the endgame is and what we'll be facing. On the other hand, the mystery of the antagonist is totally gone. In any case, we flash back to some time in the past, with Sly and Bentley the only two remaining members of the crew. Murray, blaming himself for Bentley's condition, split off on his own to embark on a spiritual journey in the Australian outback. Our first order of business is to get the big guy back, because things just wouldn't be the same or anywhere near as marketable with only two members of the trio present. You see, the structure of the plot is a little bit different this time around. We have only one heist to achieve, that of the Cooper vault, but Sly and Bentley can't hack it with just the two of them, so we need to do some recruiting. This is what the entire game is about, really, going from place to place, finding experts to join our crew and help Sly uncover his family legacy. Along the way, we might right some wrongs here and there, but even that isn't a given anymore. We have one goal, and everything from now to the end is in pursuit of that task. I'll talk more about my feelings on this at the end, but keep it in mind as we proceed. Anyway, Bentley tracks Murray down to Venice, Italy, where his guru has sent him, and we head off that way after some quick tutorial action. Before I get into the events of this level, I just need to say that Venice is an incredible setting for the first mission. The buildings stacked on top of one another, the river coursing through the level, the style of it all, everything comes together beautifully in a setting where our focus is on stealth and avoiding large encounters. I absolutely love it and hope the rest of the game holds up to this standard. Anyway, the local mob boss is causing some problems, as they tend to do, but we need to find Murray. The police station is our first target. Given the gang's extensive criminal past, they're likely to have some idea of where the hippo is if he's in town. Inside, we happen upon an old friend who says he can locate Murray for us if we let him out. In the process of doing so, we find out that Carmelita is also here with an army of hired mercenaries, so we'll keep an eye out for that. As for why the gorillas are Russian, I have no idea. If you know, maybe answer this mystery for me in the comments. Dimitri guides us to Murray's location in the sewers, so that's mission done. Or it would be, but Murray can't leave Venice until he makes the black water run pure, which probably means we need to take down the local mob boss. Kinda figured figured we'd end up doing that anyway, and this is as good a reason as any, so I guess it's fine. So who is this mob boss anyway? Don Octavio, formerly an opera singer, is a cruel man. For currently unknown reasons, he's pumping tar into the water supply, which is horrible for the environment. Bentley concocts a plan to get the police's attention and get Murray back all in one fell swoop, starting with a boat chase to eliminate the Don's hired thugs and snapping some photos of him turning on the tar pumps. This seems like as good a time as any to talk about controlling Bentley. Being in a wheelchair doesn't really seem to have slowed the little guy down, in all honesty. He's still the same little green guy we know and love from Sly 2, just with a few mechanical upgrades here and there. The abilities we get for him mostly revolve around his bombs, a magnet to pickpocket guards, and some sick afterburners for some really high jumps. There is one more major ability we get, but I'll touch on that when it comes up. Fast forwarding just a bit through some standard issue sneaking, we need Murray's help to bust up some tar drums, but the big guy's sworn off violence due to his spiritual journey. He's really adamant about that too, viewing it as some kind of atonement for what's happened to Bentley, which is a really nice character moment. We convince him busting up tar drums doesn't actually involve any violence against people, and Murray agrees to smash things up cannonball style. I'm sure it's no surprise to anyone, but we do end up getting Murray back at the end of this, so I'll go over him now. Like the rest of the gang, Murray hasn't seen too much change in the way of how he controls. The major exception to this is his new ball form. The ball form is useful in a handful of scenarios, mostly just when it's required, but it is nice to see a new move added to Murray's combo list besides just a mean right hook. Our next task is to do something I'm genuinely surprised took 3 games to happen, unless you count the tux from Sly 2, which I don't really, taking a disguise to fool the guards. We use this disguise and Sly's stellar accent work to trick the guards away so Bentley can sneak in and swipe some blueprints from the Don. We do this 3 times in total, getting distracted by some pasta sauce and a guardsman's ego along the way. While Sly and Bentley get up to their usual antics, let's talk about what exactly the Don is doing here. See, Don Octavio used to be an opera singer. Unfortunately, the youths of today just aren't really that into a 2-hour tenor solo, replacing Octavio with something a bit more hip. In a pit of despair, Octavio turned to a life of crime. Moving forward to today, the Don plans to flood Venice with tar, which in turn will give him explosive control over the city's structural support network. At Carnival, he'll make his big opera comeback, while simultaneously sinking everyone's houses. For some reason, he's convinced this will force people to do nothing but hear him sing instead of, mourning the loss of all their worldly possessions. Did you get all that? Good, because it'll all be on the quiz later. Sly and Bentley plan to stop this foolproof plan by getting rid of all the ads so no one shows up to the performance, and collecting evidence so Carmelita can legally arrest Octavio because she's a goody little two-shoes. Speaking of Carmelita, we actually get to play as her here and in a few other parts. This came as a huge shock to me, but a welcome one to be sure. She plays as essentially a third-person shooter with the world's most forgiving auto-aim. If you played Ratchet & Clank, you know how to make this girl go. And if you haven't, I strongly recommend my videos on the franchise. Alright, well that was a lot to talk about, but Sly 3 throws a lot at us in the beginning here that I wanted to go over. While I rambled, we finally made it to the climax of this Venetian adventure. The master plan here is to first destroy the machinery responsible for the tar pollution. Sly and Bentley work together on this one, and it goes off without a hitch, mostly. Next up, Bentley challenges Octavio to a singing competition, and while he's a little pitchy here and there, I think he holds his own. The most crucial part of this plan falls to Sly, who needs to drop a big chandelier thing on Octavio's head after being thoroughly embarrassed by Bentley. Carmelita unfortunately cocks all this up and Octavio survives. We chase him down on a boat, but the duo are just no match for his peak physical form. We did, however, make the black water run pure, freeing Murray from his spiritual obligation, so he gets the honor of throwing the smackdown on our first boss. Fighting Octavio is a little annoying as a first boss. The main gimmick is to flood the area with tar to slow him down so we can actually land a few hits. The problem is this man put his whole Dark Souls build into poise and he can smack us back through pretty much anything. My best strategy was to get in, hit him 2 or 3 times, and hopefully get back out before he manages to get a swing in. It works like 60% of the time, which is enough to win the fight if you're patient. With Octavio down and left for Carmelita as a consolation prize, the gang's back together. Murray needs to officially ask permission to abandon his training from his guru before we can move on, and Bentley figures the guru might come in handy with the Cooper Vault job, so it's off to Australia we go. The scenic Australian outback is looking a bit more industrial than it should right now, since apparently this is a hotspot for opal mining. These budding entrepreneurs have taken the guru hostage, so our first order of business is finding him and his stuff so he can escape. Oh, and there's also an evil mask involved in this plot, but I'm sure that won't be important. We find the guru in a big cage and his stuff in a couple of nearby caves, so now we get to take control of him for a prison break. The guru doesn't really really have much going for him other than the stupidly wild powers of turning into various pieces of the environment to instantly lose aggro and hopping on the backs of enemies to mind control into acting as a battering ram. You know, nothing too crazy. In all seriousness, I really enjoy the parts of this game where we play as not a member of the trio. The core gameplay is still the same, but they each offer something unique enough that it changes how you engage with the environment in a really fun way. With the guru now free and refusing to leave with us until this mining operation is cleared off the land I'm sure he legally has a claim to, our sights are now set on removing jobs from the workforce and I guess doing something about the evil mask while we're at it. The literal first thing we do to make that happen is feed the workers to a local gator so he gets a taste for them and begins to actively hunt them down for food. You heard that right, possibly the single most screwed up thing I could have come up with, and Bentley just spat that out as part of the plan like it's no big deal. Moving on from that war crime, we also compete in a lemonade drinking competition, which doesn't pan out how we would have liked, and use a giant crane to throw workers into an electric fence, killing them instantly. Alright, you know what? We peacefully and respectfully convince the miners to leave. The only thing that's left to do is deal with this mask. Carmelita shows up at the last second, throwing yet another wrench in our plans as the mask latches onto her and triggers some deep feeling in, I'm sure, hundreds of children around the world. Gigafox chases us down for a while to a proper arena where we now have to climb her, Shadow of the Colossus style, to pry off the mask. Strange fetish content aside, this is a fun encounter. I loved the subversion of a regular boss fight in favor of something way more unique and memorable. My only complaint is that the game isn't really good at snapping to thief points that move in this way, leading to some unfairly missed jumps. With Australia cleaned up and the guru now on our side, Bentley really wants to meet his RuneScape GF, convincing Sly that she's totally real and an engineering genius that'll be a valuable asset to the team. Sly, taking pity on his socially starved friend, agrees, and we head off to Holland for an aerial dogfight competition since this girl will only work with the best, and that's her boss. So we need to kill her boss and get her to work with us instead. In Holland, we're surrounded by other criminals and are against some heavy odds, so we need to do a bit of sabotage. The competition roster is kept hidden and we need to cheat. Fortunately, someone on staff should be gullible enough to tell us where it's at.
Like a dance floor with many lights, I have many profiles. Dig? Don't even try to understand the silky enigma of Dimitri.
I'm so glad this guy is becoming a recurring character. Oh hey, Mugshot is here too. Haven't seen him in a while. Mr. Mustache, aka the Black Baron, but I like my name more, shows up to warn us all not to cheat, and we promptly ignore that advice to go frame the two teams we're up against for some sabotage against each other. This will make it so they focus on us in the competition and we'll have a nice little edge. While Sly works on that, I want to take a moment and talk about some minor changes from Sly 2. Remember the bottles? You know, those little collectibles that had already changed drastically from the second game? Those are actually completely gone in Sly 3, meaning there are 0 collectibles at all in this game. On the one hand, I don't care because I never went for them anyway. On the other hand, it does remove a bit of the drive to explore the levels when there's nothing in them to find. That in and of itself is a shame because these places are really well crafted and you don't really get to appreciate it as much when there's nothing hidden in the corners to go find. That said, I never actively sought them out anyway, but it is worth mentioning. The other thing I want to talk about here is the abilities. The power of cash returns, but we no longer have static treasures throughout the level to find and run back to the hideout. We can only get coins from breaking stuff and or enemies and pickpocketing. Again, I see this as just an inherent negative. The treasures were fun to find and presented a neat little challenge in exchange for a nice cash reward and again incentivized exploration. Between these and the bottles, I really wish these had returned because they were a good way to stack up some extra cash besides hoping to come across someone carrying a gold nugget in their back pocket. Alright, rant over, back to Holland. We defend the hangar from Mugshot and win the passively controlling dogfight, meaning we get to take part in the championship match. Mugshot will not be taking part in this battle since he's currently under arrest by Carmelita thanks to our meddling. Before the battle takes place, we need to once again even the odds in our favor. Bentley hacks some windmills which are actually aircraft control towers so we can locate Mr. Mustache in the air. Meanwhile, the guru mind controls a giant wolf to eat a bunch of the competition because I guess we can't visit a single country without committing at least one atrocity. And now it's time for the final bout. First on the agenda, Sly needs to shoot down the big boss to win the competition. Upon realizing he might lose, the boss calls in some backup which Bentley takes down with an overclocked windmill ninja star. Regardless, the Baron lands on the wing of a commercial airliner and engages us in some fisticuffs. In every aspect except the setting, this is a really boring boss fight. There aren't even really any gimmick mechanics to work with. It's really just hit him once or twice, dodge away, and repeat the process until he's down. Every now and then he calls in some backup, but just knock them off the plane and you're good to go. Turns out the Baron is Bentley's RuneScape GF in disguise, and she agrees to join us now that we've blown her whole cover and ruined everything.
There was a bit of an awkward moment between Bentley and Penelope.
Happens to the best of us. Bentley figures that we'll also need a demolitionist to help pad our numbers, and who else to choose but one of the men that murdered Sly's parents, King Panda. Sly hates this idea, and I don't blame him, but puts that aside and we head off to China for another wholesome reunion. The king has gone really hard on the Kung Fu Panda angle, and we reenact the boss fight from Sly 1 to break him out of his meditative trance. Alright, so what major dilemma is this guy facing that we'll need to resolve before he joins the crew? So his only daughter has been kidnapped and will be forcibly married to a horrible warmonger in a few days. I guess that's fair enough. Meet General Tsao, horrible monster and delicious takeout meal paired with some white rice. He's all around not a good guy. The current plan is to get Bentley in as the wedding organizer to be a man on the inside. Meanwhile, we'll infiltrate the guy's house to do some recon. Murray's also going to go investigate some strange radio signal we've picked up. While all that happens, we've picked up a good number of extra people at this point, but you may have noticed not a lot of footage of actually playing them. The new members of the crew are not selectable as playable characters in the same way that Sly, Bentley, and Murray are. Instead, we take control of them during select missions here and there. This feels like a huge waste to me. The game builds up this stellar premise of recruiting new experts to fill the gaps in our abilities and doesn't let us use them whenever we want. I get that they aren't the focus of the story, but it just feels a little disappointing. I mean, hell, they aren't even present in the hideout. We only see these characters in cutscenes in maybe 1 or 2 missions per level. I don't know. I do like the missions where we get to play as the Guru, Panda, and the rest. I just wish they'd done more with this idea than what we got in the final product. Oh hey, we got the van back. Good, the used car market is trash right now and I hate dealing with the salesman. This is also where we get that new piece of Bentley's kit I talked about way earlier. I'll only talk about it briefly, mainly to say that I don't like the implementation. The concept of a little camera we move around to distract guards into going where we want is cool, but the range on the grapple is unclear and it's all around a pain in the ass to control. Back to the game, the plan goes fully off the rails when Tsao takes Bentley's computer, so we wing it and chase the dude into a bamboo forest for an early showdown. This part right here is probably my favorite encounter in the game, largely because I grew up on poorly dubbed kung fu movies and it made me feel like a little kid again. Crouching Chicken Hidden Raccoon ends in a mano-a-mano fight with Tsao, during which we dodge his black magic and kick him into next week. Tsao decides to call it a draw and gives us back the computer so we can finish the rest of the level. Now that our cover is blown, Tsao's up security with some zombie vampire mantises, because why not? In recompense for stealing our computer, we decide to also rob the man blind while we rescue King Panda's daughter. Speaking of King Panda, he breaks out of a schizophrenic episode and we finally get to control him for the first time to blow up the crypts causing the vampires. King Panda is a big dude like Murray, so not really a stealth specialist. Instead, he's a mobile artillery unit. Panda can lock on to up to 4 enemies at once and unleash a volley of decimating fireworks from above. Holding the lock until the bar fills causes triple damage, but don't hold it too long or they'll blow up prematurely, which King Panda promises is just because you're so pretty. With the mantises taken care of and the other preparations complete, it's time to rescue the damsel and steal some treasure. This is a fun mission in that we start with Murray and Penelope breaking into the vault, then flash over to what Sly was doing during that part of the heist. I like seeing what everyone is doing at the same time. It is a fun touch. Shockingly, things go off the rails a bit, leading to Tsao discovering the crew. He calls forth the family dragon to kidnap Penelope, and we get to fight it in a sequence that Tears of the Kingdom would shamelessly steal 18 years later. What can I even really say about this fight? We're a raccoon smacking a Chinese dragon in the face with a cane until it drops our mouse friend and dies. If you can't find at least some enjoyment in that, you really need to get over yourself. As per usual, the bad guy gets arrested by Carmelita, and King Panda joins the crew as our demolitionist despite having killed Sly's parents, which I feel like is a big ask to have him look beyond. Anyway, remember Dimitri? Well, Sucker Punch sure does, and he's calling in the favor we owe him from helping us out in Holland. This lizard is going to join our crew, isn't he? Alright, well it lets us play pirate, so I guess I can let it slide. Here, in notable tourist destination Bloodbath Bay, Dimitri wants us to help him get back his heirloom diving gear. I'm not going to go too into detail about what we do here in Bloodbath Bay, it's your usual flavors of ridiculous antics, but I will point out that our antagonist is this parrot, so we might actually get to punch the bird this time since we didn't in Sly 2. Long long story short, for this half of the bay, we track the diving gear down to an island in the ocean. In a neat little treasure hunt sequence, we locate the chest and get our prize. Captain Lafouille gets the drop on us and takes Penelope hostage, which we can't let stand since Bentley's in love with her, and now we get into the real meat of this level. I really dislike the ship. Starting with navigation, the game wants us to use the wind to speed up our travel from place to place. The problem is, so far as I could tell, the wind never changes direction, so I hope you don't mind traveling 55 miles under the speed limit if you ever need to go up or down. And this isn't a small map either. If you don't plot things out right, like I sure didn't, it can take actual minutes to get from point A to point B, and that's only if you don't get locked into a ship battle. Speaking of the ship battles, the game tries really hard to make this engaging. You have to juggle controlling Sly and the ship at the same time, which does work surprisingly well, all things considered. The issue is that once you've fired your cannons and patched a few leaks, you've seen all there is to see here. We can't ram ships to do damage, we don't get any other methods of attack other than broadside cannons, and you'd better pray you don't take too much damage since the cannons get destroyed the lower each side's health bar gets. Sure, you can board down ship to fight the crew and get more money, but I never really found it worthwhile to do so. This is all to say that I would have rather seen this whole part of the game relegated to a one-off gimmick mission instead of the main focus of the latter half of this level. It's still better than Skull and Bones though. Alright, so while I went off on a rant, the gang have powered up the cannons using Dimitri's diving gear, wiped out a few mercenary ships to thin out the Parrot's army, and enlisted the help of a local Kraken to give us some extra muscle. It's time to rescue Penelope. She could be in one of two locations, so we need to best Lafouille in a pirate battle, board his ship, and immediately surrender to trick him into revealing her location. He lets slip that she's back at his castle, so Sly heads there only for it to be a trap. Lafouille mocks us for being stupid, but we have a Kraken, so it's not really a big deal. Penelope is freed, Sly isn't dead because this was actually all totally part of our plan, and now we get to Duel of the Fates it up with Lafouille in a little swashbuckling battle that I didn't mind, even if it is a little simple. So that's it. With Dimitri and the gang, we've caught up with the beginning of the story. How did that go again? In one last deus ex machina for Sly, Carmelita shows up just in the nick of time to keep him from being crushed, and we retreat back to the ship to formulate a new plan. Cooper Island is different from the rest of the levels in that we've actually already done half of it. The rest is just getting the cane back and breaking into the vault. Everyone's skills come into play here because we need to justify having played the rest of this game so far. Starting off, the Guru mind controls some sharks to shut down the power on this electromagnetic buoy to release Sly's cane. The cane falls into the ocean, so Dimitri is up next for a deep sea dive and a brawl with a mutated fish creature controlled by Dr. M. The doc gets away with the cane, but Sly isn't quite ready to get back into action yet. We need Penelope to take the RC car for a spin to make some sick drifts and destroy the radar towers. With that done, it's time for Sly to take the biplane out. Sly takes care of the anti-air emplacements and then a swarm of bats. Dr. M shows up again in a giant whale, which we also take down, but the monkey escapes. Never mind that, we've got the cane back, and now we can finally get into the Cooper Vault with the help of King Panda. Sly goes on alone since the other members of the trio never learned how to tightrope walk, and we finally get to see what's inside the vault. The Cooper Vault is a platforming gauntlet filled to the brim with gold and Cooper memorabilia. This is exactly what you'd expect from a family with this kind of legacy. In general, I only have one real complaint with the vault, that being that it's just a touch too long, but I get why that is. The entire game built up to this point, and if it was just over in 2 minutes, I feel like I'd be more upset with that than I am with it here. At the end of the vault, we find the section dedicated to Sly's dad. Sly makes a comment about proceeding here requires a move we've never learned, but then immediately pulls off that move to do a laser grind, so I'm not really sure what that was all about. Grinding on a laser, ridiculous as it is, does feel pretty cool though. Flashing back a bit now that Sly's at the inner sanctum, what have Bentley and Murray been up to? Well, you see, it turns out Dr. M used to run with Sly's dad, but got tired of always playing second fiddle to someone he saw as his inferior. Bentley has a brief crisis seeing himself in what Dr. M has become, but Murray snaps him out of it with the power of friendship. Murray and Dr. M grapple each other, and Bentley uses ancient lasers to beat the monkey back. Once again, the doctor escapes, and we cut back to Sly for our final confrontation. The final fight with Dr. M is lacking in my mind. What exactly is it lacking, you ask? A clear opportunity to hit the damn boss. I swear this guy gives fewer fewer clean openings than Mike Tyson. Is that a good reference? I don't know, I'm not really a sports guy. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. I mean, it is a perfectly functional boss once you figure out what's going on. Well, lo and behold, we beat the monkey, but Carmelita has to show up and ruin everything. Sly jumps in front of a bullet to save her, blasting off into the rafters in the process. The final few shots are taken by Carmelita herself, and she rescues Sly.
Sly, can you remember anything?
No. Who are you?
Well, that's not the most satisfying of conclusions, but I guess it works. And so the game ends. The gang parts ways, with Bentley now taking the lead. Everyone splits off except for Lovebirds Bentley and Penelope, and the credits roll after Bentley reveals his next venture.
'Cause I'm building a time machine to find out!
I can't even begin to wrap my mind around that.
That sneaky devil.
So wait, does he have amnesia? Alright, so Sly Cooper is officially over. Yes, I know there's a fourth game, but for all intents and purposes, I am finished with the series for now. I've heard some less than stellar reports on how that game pans out, so I'll choose to live with my experience of the trilogy for a while. Overall, I think Sly 3 is a perfectly serviceable game. A solid 7 out of 10 to finish things off. I am still conflicted with the direction the story went and really not satisfied with the ending, but the high points of this title are enough to more than make up for any negatives. Do I recommend this game? I mean, yeah, if you've played the other two. Without them, it's kind of like going into Kingdom Hearts 3 with no prior knowledge and being angry that you've got no idea what's going on. Hey, maybe I should cover those games. Never mind. With this series done, I'm moving on to New Horizons. I plan on doing a few one-offs for a bit. Series like this just really take it out of me doing it all back to back. Next up on the docket is something I think you're all going to really enjoy. I won't say what it is yet, but I will say that I think it's time I covered something so horrendously awful it circles back to being hilarious. Keep an eye out for that when it comes out. As always, let me know how you felt in the comments below, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you're feeling extra spicy today. I'll see everyone next time.